Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Motivational Monday on Justin the Food Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm the host, and today I have with me my new co-host for Motivational Mondays over the next few weeks, J.R. Towe. How are you doing today, J.R.?
I'm doing great, Justin. How are you, man?
I'm doing amazing. And for those of you who don't remember, JR was on episode 8, and he's with the G.O.A.T Beef Jerky Company. And for those of you who don't remember what the G.O.A.T stands for, it stands for the greatest of all time. So today what we're going to do is I've asked JR to pick the Motivational Monday quote and topic, and I'm going to have him read it and sort of talk about how it affects him, and then we'll go from there and talk about how we can use it to motivate ourselves in our daily lives and in our business. So JR, the stage is all yours.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun doing episode 8 with you, and then I'm hoping this will be just as much fun. So you know me, I'm a huge Ford guy. You cut me open and I'll bleed blue. It happens. So and what people don't know outside of the vehicle industry is, or at least that they don't consider it, is that Henry Ford was a genius, and there's a lot that people can learn from him just going back and reading anything about him. But you know how it goes. You can find quotes from anybody. And the one I picked was by Henry Ford, and it goes like this. It says, "Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently." And I chose that one because for people that don't know, I recently started this beef jerky company, and when you start this company, you have two options. You can pay someone to help guide you through the processes of, building a company from the ground up. And they're really just holding your hand all the way through and essentially doing it for you. Well, if you're going to be a business owner, you have to mess up. In order to be a good leader and a good decision maker, you have to make a lot of wrong decisions. And I promise you I did that. and I call all those wrong or bad decisions failures, which there's, you learn a lesson from each one and then move forward. And when you get an opportunity to make a similar decision, you remember that mistake you made and put more thought into it the next time, or reach out to someone that you would consider an advisor of sorts that could not necessarily do it for you, but moreover give you options or scenarios as far as how to go about making the right decision. And that right decision is specific for each person or industry, or it's not the same. There's no cookie cutter right answer in business. I mean, at least not for me. I haven't seen that yet. I don't know about you, Justin.
No, I honestly, most of the failures I've had actually have caused me to pivot, which have led to the successes. And I often never end up where I intended to go. I set a lot of goals and want to get to a lot of places, but it's never the road or the business plan I've ever designed, for sure. And just so the audience knows, just like JR, I have a huge fondness for Ford. I've never owned any other car other than a Ford. I think I've had 3 Ford Explorers, a Ford Expedition, 2 Ford trucks, a Ford Mustang, a Ford Escape, a Ford Taurus SHO. And so I've always been tied to it. So I love this topic, and I will always buy Ford cars as long as they're around. I believe in the reliability. I believe that the way Henry Ford designed things, as he said, and the willingness to fail and learn made him such an innovator and an entrepreneur in the automotive space. And literally every company since Ford does mass production in some way, and why Toyota has kind of tweaked it to be lean production. All the fundamentals that we use in the automotive business are still his. And even in all of manufacturing in general, I know in the food world that we use a lot of those same theories in food and manufacturing and just in time, and standardizing things helps for economies of scale and things like that. But back to what you said, the hardest part about being an entrepreneur, and we did another Motivational Monday on this, but failure is so hard for people to get over, and it can be frightening. For me, sometimes, I set high goals. It's just one of the things I do, and I said sometimes even when things are going really well and I beat those goals, the next goals I set, I can be hard on myself, and I often don't look back and be like, okay, I've come a long way, and I have learned from my failures, why do I feel like I'm failing right now? And some of it's just, what is my part in all of that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You have to, a failure is just part of it. If you think ever that you're going to have a goal in mind and you're trying to achieve that goal, if you think you've got a straight line to get to that finish line, hats off to you if that ever works out. But in my experience, it never does. I set a goal just, to have a destination, but I know there, like you said, the key word is pivot. You have to be able to pivot, and then in that, if you truly are an entrepreneur at all, the pivots are where you find a lot of the good stuff. I hate to just throw out another one, but it's absolutely my favorite Henry Ford quote of all time. It is, if I had asked the people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. Yeah. So, that kind of ties together, really. By, if you think you're going here but can't adapt along the way, then all you get is faster horses. But if you can embrace the times you have to pivot and do something different because something didn't go the way you wanted it to, man, you're going to find your most success and happiness in those things, because being able to adapt to those curveballs, or whatever you want to call them, is kind of what drives the most successful people that we know of. Elon Musk, he he sets unattainable goals for his team. You know that? Have you ever read that about him?
Yeah.
That the founder of Tesla, he's like, that I push them harder than they could ever be pushed. I don't think they'll ever get there, but if they get close, that's pretty damn great. I haven't got myself to that point yet, but man, I sure hope to be, that's for sure.
Well, the thing about it, and there's two parts I want to touch on. One is, you mentioned horsepower, which is a funny thing in horses, because one is when they built cars, obviously horsepower was, they were trying to say how many horses was the engine equivalent to, but actually...
Yeah, that was a marketing tool.
Yeah, you got it. It was exactly that. It was a huge marketing tool because people weren't willing to trust a car over their horse, and so they literally attached horsepower as part of the name to these cars, so people would say, oh, it is as reliable as a horse. Oh, wait, no, it's reliable as 3 horses.
Correct, yeah.
And so it's a huge marketing thing. And in pivoting and doing that, it became, we still use the term today, not because we're still attached to horses, but because it became such an amazing marketing tool that it stuck. And people really, it became something that they transitioned to. And the second part I want to say is, I think what people do when they set goals or unattainable goals for themselves, sometimes you actually achieve them. I don't think anyone thought we would actually land a man on the moon in 1969. And
exactly.
We didn't really even have technology. And in my opinion, still to this day, I'm still like, how the heck, we were all analog. It wasn't like we were digital anything. Did we take a group of humans, and get them to the moon and land on it? And, that was, 50 years ago now almost. And, or actually it is 50 years, I guess, this year. Uh-huh. And so setting those high goals, they may be crazy, but you have the right leadership and the right group of people that are willing to strive for it, then they don't back off. And failure, yeah, people died during doing that. People died building Ford cars at the beginning. There wasn't the safety and the things that are there, but people believed in what they were doing, and people took upon the leadership of Henry Ford or Elon Musk or John F. Kennedy, and later LBJ, that, and arguably whatever your opinion is on their leadership, the point is that they inspired people to do it. And that's crazy because a group of people believed enough in it to do it. And that's what we do as entrepreneurs. It may be crazy. It may sound crazy to become a big company or provide food or, in your case, put beef jerky all over the globe. But setting the goal and then inspiring the people to do it is important. And then the willingness to fail, like we talked about, because you're going to have to fail in order to get it. It's not just going to happen. And if it just happens, something's not right. You know when it's right and when it's wrong. And sometimes growing too fast is a problem, and having those little failures along the way to keep us in check allows us to grow sustainably.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, so I wanted to make sure I gave you room to comment on those items.
Yeah, you have to absolutely embrace your failures. Can't recall if I already said that, but that's where you learn. For people to say this, man, I went to the school of hard knocks. Most people just take that comment in passing, but when you break that down to its essence, that means I didn't know if I was going to be successful, and I knew I was going to get bruised up, bloodied, and maybe even cut trying to do what I wanted to do and learn what I wanted to learn. But I was willing to do that. And those are the best lessons learned. And I really don't know, man, the snowflake thing right now, I guess is what they're calling people, or I don't know if that's a derogatory statement or not, but there was no snowflakes around when we were trying to put somebody on the moon. Those guys were all in. Let's do this. It wasn't there's this data that I'm supposed to trust, and I will, but if it goes bad, then I'm going to let it go bad, and then I'll have somebody to blame for it. That wasn't the case, was it? I have an idea in mind. We have some decent parameters or whatever to get this ship up there to the moon. And the guys on board of that did what they could to make it happen, instead of sitting back looking for someone to blame for when things didn't go the way they were told it was supposed to. They kind of knew things weren't going to go right, didn't they? and they just, like you say, overcome and adapt and figure out a way to make it happen. And that's, man, if we could raise some more people like that really just want to find a way to achieve success based on their own accord and not blame people for when things don't go their way, then wow, we'd have a pretty inspiring nation of youngsters, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Is one of the things we've done is we've rewarded mediocrity. And while I'm saying we want to reward failure, the reward for failure is the learning lesson in it. That's enough of the reward to learn to do better. But to reward mediocrity, I think, is one of the issues that we're having. And we're teaching people to be content in average.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while I'm not saying you need to be an A+ student to succeed in the world, and the reason that the C and the D students often are some of the most successful business people in the world is because they have something to prove, because someone gave them those C's and D's and lit a fire under their ass, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, Justin, you're talking to one of those guys. I did terrible in school.
Yeah.
All I heard was Peanuts teachers in every class. All I could hear, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to listen in and understand what you're saying. It just doesn't translate. So yeah, you're spot on that. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and I think it's, we are the groups that often entrepreneurs are the ones that color outside the lines, and I love that we were talking about this, and this is where the podcast is going, because while we do need to not, do things as the generation has done before us, but we also need to learn enough from them to improve from it, not take steps backwards. And, you have the greatest generation that's, slowly trickling off as they get older, and it's a sad thing. And the reason they were the greatest generation ever is because they were willing to do whatever it took to find success, including self-sacrifice. And, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, and JR being one of them, and the group of people that I work with, is that we're willing to go out there and sacrifice ourselves and do what's best for the company and do what's best for the employees and help grow our businesses. And we're in the trenches every day. But what we're not doing, other than the entrepreneurs that are in this who are passing it on to their children, is the rest of the world isn't teaching their children the work ethic that it takes, or the ability to succeed, or, and nothing, like you said, is ever their fault. I mean, if I hear "this is not my fault" one more time, I'm like, why is it that we're shaming people so much that they want to say it's not my fault? Like, how about you say it's your fault and you take pride in it's that your fault, that you tried it and you failed? I don't know why we've shifted that thing so badly.
You nailed it. There it is. Going back to one of the greatest generations ever that's slowly, unfortunate way of saying it, dying off. What people aren't getting from that generation, which I was blessed with, having a conversation with someone one day and defining wisdom to me. Wisdom doesn't necessarily mean, like you say, they made straight A's in school or things like that. That means they've been there and done that, and they can give you instruction and somewhat guide you through your own course, but it's not this. I don't know. Justin, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, but it's that generation has something invaluable, and that's wisdom. They've been there and done that. And for anybody listening that has someone elderly that has accomplished anything in their life, if they just have a conversation with them and listen to what they have to say about how they accomplished what they were proud of, and the things they had to do to get there, which is huge. Certainly those people didn't have it as easy as we do, right? they had to put in a whole lot. They had a whole lot more at risk than most anyone today, trying to put themselves out there and do something different than waking up, clocking in, blaming things on their boss, why their life sucks. Unfortunately, that's the career you chose, but it's your boss's fault in some sort of way, right? For hiring you.
That's exactly it.
And, I have a personal attachment to this, but, my son's, he'll be pissed at me for hearing me say this if he even listens, but he's a pretty accomplished little athlete. And I didn't get to play sports very much in school. I wanted to, but as I previously stated, my grades didn't cooperate with competing in sports. But this kid, he's pretty sharp, and he gets to do whatever athletic event he wants. And man, if those aren't some of the best life lessons people can learn, as long as the parents stay out of the way. If those kids get out there and get a chance to fail and they achieve success based on their own swing of the bat, or they go sit down because of their swing of the bat. And if the parents will stay out of the way and let the kid realize, man, I swung at a bad pitch, or, oh, I knew that was my pitch and that's the one I wanted, and just jumped on it. Those are great lessons. Yeah. Those are things that are earned, which is something else undervalued. Is the feeling you get from earning something on your own accord, something you did all yourself and achieve success because of it. No one else was there, just you and the situation, and boom.
Yeah.
You got something you want to put a smile on your face, or you're not real happy with yourself and you go sit down, and you don't blame anyone else. It's your fault. It looked like it was going to be a ball, but it turns out it was a strike and you didn't swing at it. Really sorry about that, but that's on you.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's so important. And the whole thing of everyone gets equal playing time thing is a totally blows my mind type of thing. Like, wait a second, we're not teaching them to earn their way in life, that life is going to be this equality of life. And for lack of a better term, it's socialism in sports. And I'm like, how is that happening right now? Why are
because
we
people think that, yeah, sorry, Justin.
No, go ahead. I want you to go ahead. People think.
Because people think that equal and fair are the same things. They're not.
No.
They're absolutely equal is not the same thing as fair. We can be fair to everyone, but equal is earned. You know, that I'll be fair to you and give you the same opportunities that I'm going to give everyone else. However, what the yield of that is based on that individual person's effort, and that's what's frustrating. I've had this conversation with a good friend of mine. He's a doctor in Mustang where we live, and he's told me, had conversations about people saying, man, my Jimmy's mom is mad because he doesn't get equal playing time. Well, and that's where I got it. That's what he said. Well, equal is not fair. It's not the same. He doesn't get equal playing time. I give him a fair chance to earn that playing time, but he doesn't get the same playing time if he doesn't produce as much as Bobby or, you know, whatever, trying to leave names out of it. But how do we teach that? How do we teach people that equal and fair are not the same thing?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you said that. Actually, Deborah and I talk about all that all the time in life, and employees and my stepdaughters, and everything. Is what people don't realize is the fairness is in the opportunity to do it, but the being equal is a matter of how much you want to fight for it. I mean, if you want to talk about equality back in the day, you know, we can argue it wasn't equal, but the group of people that fought to make equal rights, to make things quote unquote equal, it wasn't like it started off equal for them. They had to fight for it, and it's the same thing that we need to look at in all of our opportunities in life. If we want it to be equal, we got to fight for that equality. But I can tell you what, once we get equal, we're going to complain that it's equal, because if you're fighting for it, then we're going to want, why am I not getting more? And you're like, well, wait a second, you were just complaining 2 weeks ago it wasn't equal, and now you're complaining why it is equal and you don't have more. And so, you know, that's just to keep in mindset that the thing we really need to understand as human beings is that no matter where we live or what we do, we are naturally competitive with one another, with our neighbor. And people always say, oh, what are the Joneses doing down the street? But that's because we're naturally competitive. It's not a comparison to compare ourselves that we keep getting attached to, whether it's on social media, as we discussed earlier, or whatever. That it shouldn't be there to compare ourselves. It should be there to motivate us and inspire us to do better. If we're comparing ourselves, then we're like, okay, well, I don't have this and he does, and woe is me. How about, hey, how do I get that plus more?
Yeah, exactly. And the trick is just finding a way to be honest with yourself. I'm not in competition with you. Yeah, you kind of are, and there's nothing wrong with that. Be in competition with me. Good. You know, I actually, golly, I wish I could recall who it was that I was speaking with the other day. Forgive me, I'll move on from that. But they said, you know, it was some sort of a meeting regarding our company, and they said, well, what are your competitors doing about this, you know, given subject? And they looked at me like I was a fool, but I said, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
I don't care what my competitors are doing. I'm vaguely aware that there's other companies that make jerky and they can go and do their things. Guess what? I buy jerky that's not my brand because there's other stuff out there I like, and that's okay. But guess what? I think mine is the greatest of all time, of course.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be concerned with what the other guys, local or nationwide or whatever, what they're doing. Why do I want to go and do what they're doing. Just because they found some success in, that certain subject doesn't mean that we're going to. You have to tailor things that fit your leader's personality and skill set. You have to tailor things towards the personnel you have on hand. You may not have the same kind of people on staff that this company has that you're trying to do what they're doing. That it just seems unreasonable, and the list goes on and on. But I didn't mean to go off on a rant there, but it was. I still. Why would you ask me what my competitors are doing? First of all, I don't feel that I have any competitors, and secondly, I don't care what they're doing. Let them do their thing. I've got to figure out my own way. That's how I find success, is finding what works for me and my people that I have surrounding me.
And there's 3 points on that, really, is if you're focusing on your competitor, one, you're comparing yourself to them. And that's not
limiting.
So there's negativity there. 2 is you're not being authentic and true to yourself, and you're not going to find success unless you run the business and move the business and lead the business that's true to you. So I always find that same thing. I can't tell you how many times I get asked that same question. I'm like, I don't even know, and it doesn't really matter to me, nor do I care. I'm keeping my eye on the goal, not on my competitor. So my third part is, and I've talked about it on this podcast before, is there's a picture that I love from the Olympics of Michael Phelps, and he is just crushing it. But the guy that's in second place can't help but keep looking at him as he's swimming, and where he's looking is just at the finish line. And that's it. If you're going to concentrate on your competition, you're always going to be second. Because one, they're doing it well, but you're only going to do it second best to them, because you're never going to be able to replicate their model and their success. So you may replicate some of it, but you're always going to be second. And you're never going to be first. And so, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I love that. That's one of the better lessons if you want to call him that, my mentor at the company I used to work for before I started the Jerky company. He said to me one time, and it was not directed at me, but he said that, see if I can get the quote exactly right. He said, if your goal is to be average, you will always come up short. Yeah. And that's something that resonated with me, and I'll never forget it. Those are pretty wise words, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you just want to fit somewhere in the middle, you're never going to get there. And that kind of ties it back into pushing yourself and, building on your failures, but just doing it again with a little better approach the next time, right? I love that. I should make that guy a plaque and send it to him. He's still a very good friend of mine, even though he was, he's the vice president of the company I left. But and he was also a big sports guy. Big draw, he played college sports. His son played college sports and professional sports, and I got to think those mindsets all kind of tie together somehow in finding success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in sports for kids is just such an important part. I think it's a shame that we're trying to push our own agendas on it, and we're robbing our children of the most valuable lesson, which is life. It doesn't work that way. It's not like every person works for a company and gets equal pay and gets equal opportunity and all of that. I mean, then we wouldn't have the success we have. And obviously, countries like the USSR have demonstrated that equality across the board and fairness across the board. And manufacturing, it goes against human will, number one.
Yeah, it does.
And number two, it's just you're not going to find success in it. And it's just not sustainable long term, because we need to be competitive as human beings. And I think that's, when JR gets on the next episode, I guess it's probably my turn to find a quote, but I really think we're probably getting into something on competitiveness and what it means. And we've talked about it in a few episodes on Motivational Monday, but really I think we're diving into the real deep things here and JR and I see a lot of things the same way, and I think it's important. But one of the things, I want to tell you, JR, and I want to tell the audience is there's this great program that just came out on Netflix, and we started off talking about Ford, so we're definitely over the next few episodes, JR's on, going to talk more about cars and things like that because I love it. But it's a Formula One documentary, basically, that's just came out on Netflix. I'm like literally an overnight Formula One fan suddenly. And I've watched it once, and then I watched it, and Deborah, I started showing it to her, and she's like, oh, I got to watch this with you. But the business lessons in this documentary, it's just incredible. Forget the whole cars and love of cars, which is a whole thing, but these are literally 10 businesses that are having to manage employees and egos, and they're not only do they get rated on how well their drivers do, but they get rated on how well they do as a team. So they get, the Constructors' Cup, which is each team, rankings, and then they get the driver rankings and who does the best driver. And, it shows that fairness is allowing each team to be there. If you have the money and you're willing to go in there, fine, fairness is there. But there's no budget, so teams can spend different amount of monies. Teams can recruit different type of drivers. Teams can actually, the cars are not standard. They're standard rules, but within those standards, each team has leeway on how to build and design their cars around their drivers. And so it shows this exact lesson we're learning. So what I think we'll do is, and I'll find a quote from some great Formula One driver, but next week I want to just talk about that documentary. And JR, if you got time, I swear you need to watch this thing. It blew my mind. But
yeah, that sounds great. I'm excited about that. I love these things.
Yeah. So and Formula One starts this weekend, which is perfect timing. So now I've got a subscription to the Formula One channel. It's like, what great marketing, because now I'm totally bought in and didn't know a single Formula One driver's name until this past week. But wow. So I think that should be our topic for next week, is we can tie that back into business and start from there, since we'll just sort of keep everything related to automotive and Ford and cars, which to my disappointment, there's not a single Ford engine in Formula One, but
there's not?
No, not right now. And to my disappointment, go ahead.
They had the Lincoln LS. That car had a V8 in it, and the cylinders were about the size of a ping pong ball, I believe. But that was their V8 engine. I didn't know that they didn't still have that, which I guess technically that's not a Ford, right? But
yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it is. No, but I think one of the things, it's like now I have this little friggin' thing in the back of my head. It's like, okay, now I really need to set a goal. I need to go change that and get a Ford engine back into the Formula One. And there is one American company, the Haas Group. So I'm proud that there is an American team, even though there's no American drivers in Formula One right now. But these are some of the things, like I'm like, okay, what is going on here? What are we doing that we don't have a Formula One race car driver as an American? Like we have all these NASCAR drivers. And why aren't we as Americans building quality enough engines that they can become a Formula One thing? I guess it could be a profitability versus budget versus expense thing to build the engine, but why aren't we priding ourselves on building the best engines in the world that end up in these Formula One cars? And so, again, I think it goes back to our topic where we've sort of dulled competition and we've dulled victory in competition. But I would love to talk about that next week for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, Justin, I'll tell you this. If you're trying to champion a Ford engine in the Formula One, I can tell you, and I'm a fan, of course, and I don't know if anyone's ever seen or looked at our social media close enough to see that I've got an S550 Mustang sitting on jack stands in my warehouse that's currently being built. We're trying to push that thing up to about 3,000 horse, which would be great, just for fun. Promotional item for the company, of course.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the only way that's going to be possible is we have to buy it is a Ford engine. It's a Coyote block, right? The 5.0 5-liter engine.
Yep.
But there's a company out of, I believe, and I apologize if they ever hear about this. I think they're in New Mexico or California. I can't recall. They're called Modular Motorsports Racing. They take a solid chunk of aluminum and they machine this exact Ford replica block out of a solid chunk of aluminum. And they call it the Gen X Coyote. And that sucker is, you can turn it like 10,000 RPM. that is the Ford engine that belongs in the Formula One racing. So if you're looking for one to start a campaign about, look them up. You're going to be blown away after we get finished with this podcast and look at their YouTube videos of these guys machining this engine out of a solid chunk of aluminum. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me because I kind of came from a machine shop type background, so it was fun to watch these things. And anyway, I didn't mean to take over where you're going with that.
No, that's perfect. I love talking about it. No, I want to talk about this more, and I think we're at a perfect point to sort of take this episode and give the audience time to look at the documentary on Netflix, you and I to look at it more, and then come back around next week and record more about this experience and what we can learn from the Formula One racing and the documentaries and have the first race take place. But I definitely want to come back and talk about it because I think cars are something everyone's interested in, and the lessons can be tied back to food and food production in so many ways, and entrepreneurship and all of that in the model. So JR, thank you for taking the time to do a Motivational Monday with me, and I appreciate it for sure.
Absolutely, Justin, and thanks again for having me on. It's fun for me to do a nice little break from the grind, if you will.
Yeah, get out of yourself for a little bit is probably a good thing.
Yes, it is.
I should
Absolutely.
say probably. I know it is. I have to do it myself.
Yeah, you do know it is. Yeah. I believe it. Yeah,
man. That's how the whole podcast started. I thought it'd be a way to get out of myself for a little bit and help other people. And, that's been great. And on that note, if people like what we're doing and you like our episodes, people are volunteering their time, and JR and the other entrepreneurs that are on this show, and Deborah and I are volunteering our time. We're not getting paid. No one's getting paid for any of this. And while people are promoting their business, they're really being vulnerable and telling their story. So share what we're doing here. All we ask is that you tell someone about our podcast and try to help someone and let them listen in and maybe learn from what we're doing here. We don't ask for anything. We don't collect any money. We're just out there trying to spread the word and help people. And a little bit like we talked about on this podcast is we're trying to educate the next generation to be a better generation and regain the work ethic and the hard work we were known for as Americans. And any other country out there that's listening, it's the same thing. How do we become the greatest generation ever, not only as the United States, but as a world as a whole, and really bring this forward? So please share what we're doing, because I think what we're doing here, it wasn't our intent when we started the podcast. It was to share and help other food entrepreneurs, but we're really starting to see people learn and want more information. And as Jay and I just talked, we didn't come up with a script. We sort of threw out a topic and let it go to where our hearts and our minds are. So please, share what we're doing. Again, I'm Justin Bizzarro, and you can reach me at Justin and the Food Entrepreneurs Podcast on social media. And J.R. Towe, you can reach him on social media at the G.O.A.T Beef Jerky. And feel free to email him or text him or direct message him over social media. He'd be glad to have you guys try some of his beef jerky. I'm telling you, it will change your life. It is the greatest thing ever. I literally carry it around with me on business trips, as you can see on the social media on the podcast, that I took it with me to the Virgin Islands everywhere we went. So everyone enjoy, and thank you again, and thank you, JR.
Absolutely, man.